Ma'am, your family needs to exit this aircraft immediately. We've received multiple passenger complaints about excessive noise and inappropriate behavior. Flight attendant Rebecca Sullivan's voice cut through the cabin of Southwest Airlines Flight 2847 like a blade. She stood in the aisle, pointing directly at the Williams family seated in row 12. Her finger trembled slightly, not from nerves but from barely contained authority. Tyrone Williams, 45, looked up from helping his youngest son Isaiah with a puzzle book. His wife Aisha sat beside him, reviewing legal documents on her laptop. Their 3 children, Cameron, 17, Zara, 15, and Isaiah, 12, had been quietly engaged in their own activities for the past 20 minutes, since takeoff from Los Angeles. "Excuse me?" Aisha's voice remained steady, professional. "What complaints?" Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "The smell of your ethnic food is disturbing other passengers, and your children's volume levels are unacceptable." The cabin fell silent. Passengers turned in their seats, phones emerging from pockets. In seat 8C, Maria Gonzalez hit the red record button on TikTok. "Y'all, this is happening right now on my flight," she whispered into her phone. Tyrone's leather briefcase sat partially open beside him. A corner of an official document was visible. Southwest Airlines Board of Directors letterhead peeking through, "Have you ever been judged as a family simply because of the color of your skin?" 25 minutes into the flight, Rebecca's voice carried the authority of 12 years in aviation. "Sir, I need you and your family to gather your belongings and move to the rear of the aircraft." "On what grounds?" Aisha closed her laptop, her legal training kicking in automatically. "Company policy allows crew discretion for passenger comfort." Rebecca's smile never reached her eyes. "Other travelers have expressed concerns about cultural differences." Cameron Williams pulled out his iPhone, thumb hovering over the camera app. His father's subtle headshake stopped him. "What specific policy?" Tyrone's voice remained calm, measured. "I'd like to see the documentation." Rebecca's cheeks flushed. "Are you questioning my authority?" From row 8, Maria's TikTok had already gained 47 viewers. The comment section filled rapidly. "This is discrimination. Sue them." "Where's the captain?" In the galley, junior flight attendant Jennifer Lee whispered into her headset, "We have a situation in 12A through 12F. Family refusing relocation orders." Tyrone reached into his briefcase, fingers grazing a business card that read, "Southwest Airlines Board of Directors, Executive Member." He left it untouched. "My children haven't violated any rules," Aisha said. "Isaiah was doing homework. Cameron was reading. Zara was listening to music with headphones." "The food odor. We haven't eaten anything on this flight." Rebecca's jaw tightened. She keyed her radio. "Captain Miller, we need immediate assistance in the main cabin." 18 minutes until the situation would spiral beyond anyone's control. Behind them, elderly passenger Robert Parker started his own Instagram live stream. Viewer count, 156 and climbing. The aircraft's internal camera system recorded everything, standard protocol for potential incidents. Rebecca didn't know those recordings would be subpoenaed within 72 hours. Tyrone's phone buzzed. A text from an unlisted number. "Emergency board meeting scheduled 2 p.m. EST. Your input required on discrimination protocols." He set the phone face down on his tray table. "Ma'am," Tyrone addressed Rebecca directly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we should involve your supervisor." "I am the senior crew member on this flight." Rebecca's voice rose slightly. "And I'm telling you to move." Zara Williams, 15 and eloquent beyond her years, spoke for the first time. "Mom, are we being treated differently because we're black?" The question hung in the recycled air like smoke. Rebecca's face went pale. "This has nothing to do with race. This is about passenger comfort and compliance." "Whose comfort?" Cameron asked, finally unable to stay silent. "Everyone around us looks comfortable except you." Maria's TikTok had reached 312 viewers. The hashtag #flight discrimination began trending in Los Angeles. Jennifer Lee approached from the galley, tablet in hand. I have the passenger relocation form. What's the stated reason for relocation? Aisha's legal training took full control now. Jennifer glanced at Rebecca, then at the form. Disruptive behavior and complaints about food odors. Document that we've eaten nothing on this aircraft, Aisha instructed her children. Cameron, please note the time and exact wording. The teenager pulled out his phone's note app. 2:47 p.m. Crew alleging food odors and disruptive behavior. No food consumed on aircraft. The family has remained quiet since takeoff. Sir, Rebecca's tone sharpened. Phones need to be put away during crew instructions. There's no such regulation during level flight, Aisha countered smoothly. FAA regulations permit electronic device usage above 10,000 feet unless specifically instructed otherwise for safety reasons. Rebecca's confidence wavered. She wasn't used to passengers who knew aviation law. 15 minutes. In seat 14D, business traveler Sandra Torres lowered her book. Excuse me, flight attendant? I've been sitting 2 rows behind this family the entire flight. They've been nothing but quiet and respectful. Rebecca spun around. Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. It concerns all of us when passengers are being harassed, Sandra replied calmly. She pulled out her phone. I'm documenting this for my travel blog. 40,000 followers. The situation was metastasizing. What started as a simple passenger relocation was becoming a public relations nightmare at 35,000 feet. Tyrone watched Rebecca's growing frustration with the detached interest of someone who'd seen corporate theater many times before. He owned restaurants, hotels, and entertainment venues across 3 states, but more importantly, he owned something Rebecca had no idea about. 13 minutes. Captain David Miller emerged from the cockpit, his expression serious. What seems to be the problem here? Rebecca straightened. Sir, this family is refusing to comply with crew instructions for passenger relocation. Based on what violation? Miller was a 20-year veteran, and he'd seen real problems. This didn't feel like one. Multiple passenger complaints, Rebecca insisted. Miller glanced around the cabin. Most passengers were filming or watching intently. None looked disturbed by the Williams family, only by the confrontation itself. How many complaints? Rebecca hesitated. 2 written complaints. From which passengers? Another hesitation. The complaints were verbal. Miller's experience told him something was wrong. In 12 years of flying, he'd never seen a family composed during a genuine disturbance. The Williams children sat quietly, the parents remained respectful, and surrounding passengers seemed supportive of the family. Rebecca, can you show me these complaint forms? They were verbal complaints, sir. I documented them per protocol. Let me see your documentation. Rebecca's tablet showed a hastily typed note. Passenger complaints regarding noise and food odors from family in row 12. No timestamps, no specific passenger identification, no detail. Tyrone's phone buzzed again. This time he glanced at it. Quarterly discrimination report due tomorrow. Zero tolerance policy in full effect. Janet Harrison, CEO. He almost smiled. Captain Miller's radio crackled. Flight 2847, Denver Center. Be advised, we're receiving social media reports about an incident on your aircraft. Please advise on the status. The captain's expression shifted. Social media meant corporate attention. Corporate attention meant paperwork, investigations, and potential FAA involvement. 10 minutes. As they moved toward the galley, Tyrone finally reached into his briefcase. His fingers found the business card he'd been avoiding. Southwest Airlines Board of Directors. Tyrone R. Williams, executive member. He left it face down on his tray table. 8 minutes remaining. Captain Miller's private conversation with Rebecca lasted exactly 90 seconds. When they returned, Miller's jaw was set in a hard line that 20 years of flying had taught him to reserve for genuine emergencies. "Mr. Williams," Miller's voice carried military precision, "I apologize for the confusion. After reviewing the situation, I see no violation of federal aviation regulations or company policy." Rebecca's face flushed crimson. "Captain, with respect, I have the authority to—" "You have the authority to ensure passenger safety," Miller cut her off. "Not to relocate passengers based on unsubstantiated complaints." The cabin had transformed into an amphitheater. Passengers craned their necks, phones raised like digital torches. Maria's TikTok stream had exploded to 1,847 viewers. The comments section moved too fast to read, a waterfall of outrage, support, and disbelief. "This is live from Southwest Flight 2847, Maria whispered into her phone. "Y'all are witnessing straight-up discrimination right now." 6 minutes. Jennifer Lee approached with official paperwork. "Captain, I have the passenger incident report form. Should I file a disruptive passenger complaint?" Miller examined the blank form, then looked at the Williams family. Tyrone sat calmly, reviewing documents from his briefcase. Aisha typed quietly on her laptop. The children remained engaged in their activities. Homework, reading, music. No disruption visible anywhere except the one created by his crew. "Against which passenger?" Miller asked pointedly. Jennifer's uncertainty was palpable. The family refusing relocation? On what grounds? I see no federal aviation regulation violations, no safety concerns, no actual disruption. Miller's voice carried the weight of someone who'd testified in federal aviation hearings. Filing false incident reports violates both company policy and federal law. Behind them, Robert Parker's Instagram Live had reached 2,300 viewers. His voice was steady, grandfatherly. "Folks, I've been flying for 40 years. I've seen drunk passengers, fighting passengers, sick passengers. This family, they're the most well-behaved people on this aircraft." The validation from multiple sources created a narrative shift. Passengers began verbally supporting the Williams family. "They've been nothing but polite," called out Sandra Torres from 14D. "This is discrimination, plain and simple," added a businessman from first class. 4 minutes. Rebecca's authority was dissolving in real time. She'd never faced a situation where passengers actively contradicted crew assessment. Training had taught her that crew authority was absolute, passengers compliant. This felt like mutiny. "Everyone needs to stay in their seats and mind their own business," Rebecca announced to the cabin. Actually, Aisha spoke for the first time in 10 minutes. Federal Aviation Regulation 91.11 requires passenger compliance with crew instructions only when those instructions relate to safety or federal law. Witnessing potential civil rights violations is protected speech under the First Amendment. The legal precision of Aisha's response struck the cabin like lightning. Passengers exchanged glances. Rebecca's mouth opened, then closed. Cameron Williams looked up from his phone. "Mom, the hashtag flight discrimination has 4,200 posts in the last 15 minutes. "Put the phone away," Rebecca snapped. "Under what regulation?" Cameron's voice carried the respectful challenge of someone raised by lawyers. "We're above 10,000 feet in level flight, and electronic devices are explicitly permitted unless safety concerns exist." Captain Miller intervened. "The young man is correct. Electronic devices are permitted during this phase of flight." Rebecca's frustration boiled over. This family is being deliberately confrontational. They're challenging every instruction, creating a hostile environment for other passengers. By asking for legal justification? Tyrone's voice remained maddeningly calm. By requesting documentation of alleged policy violations? By exercising constitutional rights? The questions hung in the recycled air like accusations. 2 minutes. Miller's radio crackled again. "Southwest 2847 Denver Center. We're receiving multiple social media reports about your flight. Corporate headquarters has requested a status update. Corporate attention. The captain's nightmare scenario was manifesting in real time. Miller keyed his radio. Denver Center, Southwest 2847. We have a minor passenger service issue being resolved. No safety concerns, no emergency. But his expression told a different story. Corporate calls during flight meant investigations, media attention, potential career impact. Jennifer Lee whispered urgently to Rebecca, "The incident report requires specific regulation violations. I can't list general non-compliance without citing actual federal laws." Rebecca's training had never covered this scenario. Passengers who knew aviation law better than she did, social media documentation, and growing passenger opposition to crew authority. "Fine," Rebecca's voice carried the edge of someone making a final stand. "If this family won't comply with reasonable crew instructions, we'll file for law enforcement intervention upon landing." The threat landed like a bomb. Tyrone's fingers found his phone. One message to send, one call to make, one card to play that would end this charade permanently. Instead, he set the phone down untouched. Officer intervention for what charges? Aisha's legal mind engaged fully. Failure to comply with lawful crew instructions requires that instructions be lawful. What law have we violated? Rebecca couldn't answer because no law had been violated. Her authority rested on company policy she couldn't cite, passenger complaints she couldn't document, and federal regulations she didn't fully understand. 0 minutes. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Rebecca could retreat gracefully or escalate dramatically. Corporate protocol demanded de-escalation. Personal pride demanded vindication. Maria's TikTok now has 3,400 viewers. Comments flooded in faster than the eye could follow. This is America in 2024. Sue them for everything. Captain needs to control his crew. Where are the real complaints? Document everything. Robert Parker's Instagram Live had attracted 4,100 viewers and climbing. His commentary provided real-time analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're witnessing is a textbook example of unconscious bias escalating into overt discrimination. The social media wildfire was spreading beyond the aircraft. Local news stations in Los Angeles and New York had picked up the hashtag. Southwest Airlines' corporate Twitter account would receive its first complaint about Flight 2847 in exactly 6 minutes. Tyrone reached into his briefcase one final time. His fingers traced the edge of a document that could end this confrontation with a single revelation. Southwest Airlines quarterly board meeting, executive session, discrimination protocol review. Chairman, Tyrone R. Williams, he left it untouched. Rebecca, Captain Miller's voice carried final authority. Return to your station. This matter is closed. Captain, I strongly disagree with... That's an order. The military command structure of aviation asserted itself. Rebecca had no choice but to comply, her authority thoroughly undermined in front of 150 passengers and thousands of social media viewers. But as she walked toward the galley, her radio crackled with an incoming message that would change everything. Flight 2847, this is Southwest Operations. We need immediate contact with passenger Tyrone Williams. Priority Alpha Protocol. Priority Alpha, the highest level of corporate emergency communication. Rebecca stopped walking. Captain Miller's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion to something approaching alarm. Tyrone Williams smiled for the first time since boarding. The power dynamic was about to flip completely. Priority Alpha. Rebecca had heard the term in training but never seen it used. Priority Alpha meant board-level corporate emergency. Priority Alpha meant someone on this aircraft had direct access to Southwest Airlines executive leadership. Captain Miller's radio crackled again. Southwest 2847, Operations. We need immediate voice contact with passenger Tyrone Williams. Patch him through on frequency 131.7. Miller's 20 years of flying had never prepared him for this. Passengers didn't receive priority alpha communications. Passengers didn't get patched through to corporate operations during flight. Passengers were passengers, except when they weren't. Rebecca stood frozen in the aisle, her confidence evaporating like fuel at altitude. Who is Tyrone Williams? Tyrone looked up from his briefcase with the expression of someone who'd been waiting for this exact moment. I suppose it's time for introductions. He reached into his briefcase and withdrew a leather portfolio, the Southwest Airlines logo embossed in gold. Official, expensive, executive. Captain Miller, I believe operations is looking for me. Miller's confusion was visible. Sir, I don't understand. Are you law enforcement? Federal Air Marshal? Not exactly. Tyrone opened the portfolio. The first document visible read, Southwest Airlines Board of Directors, Executive Session Minutes. Chairman, Tyrone R. Williams. The cabin's energy shifted like atmospheric pressure before a storm. Maria's TikTok stream exploded to 6,200 viewers. Her whispered commentary became urgent. Y'all, something major is happening. I think this man is somebody important. Rebecca's face drained of color. That's not possible. Tyrone withdrew a second document. Southwest Airlines ownership structure, major shareholders. His name appeared second on the list. Williams Family Trust, 34.7% voting shares. Captain, Tyrone's voice remained calm. I think you should take that call from operations. Miller keyed his radio with trembling fingers. Southwest Operations, this is Flight 2847. I have passenger Tyrone Williams available. The response came immediately. Patch Mr. Williams through immediately. This is Janet Harrison, CEO. The CEO of Southwest Airlines was personally calling a passenger during flight. Rebecca stumbled backward, her authority not just undermined, but obliterated. Jennifer Lee's mouth hung open. Captain Miller stared at Tyrone like he'd just discovered he was flying with a ghost. Tyrone accepted the radio headset Miller offered with steady hands. Janet, this is Tyrone. I'm currently documenting a discrimination incident on Flight 2847. The CEO's voice crackled through the radio, audible to everyone in the forward cabin. Tyrone, we're receiving social media reports about problems on your flight. What's your status? I'm sitting with my family in row 12. We've been ordered to relocate to the rear of the aircraft based on alleged passenger complaints about food odors and disruptive behavior. No such complaints exist. No food has been consumed. No disruption has occurred. Silence on the radio. Then, put me through to the captain. Miller took the headset with hands that weren't quite steady. This is Captain Miller. Captain, this is Janet Harrison, CEO of Southwest Airlines. You have our board chairman and largest individual shareholder on your aircraft. He's traveling with his family. They are being harassed by your crew. Explain. Miller's military bearing crumbled. Ma'am, there appears to have been a misunderstanding about passenger complaints. What complaints? Miller looked at Rebecca, who stood paralyzed in the aisle. Flight attendant Sullivan reported multiple passenger complaints about noise and food odors. From which passengers? Miller's voice became barely audible. The complaints appear to have been unsubstantiated. Janet Harrison's response would be heard by 8,400 TikTok viewers, 5,600 Instagram watchers, and 150 aircraft passengers. Captain Miller, you are to ensure Mr. Williams and his family receive the highest level of service for the remainder of this flight. Flight attendant Sullivan is to report to me personally upon landing. This incident will be fully investigated. The radio went silent. Tyrone handed the headset back to Miller. Thank you, Captain. The cabin was dead silent except for the aircraft's engines and the subtle sound of phones recording. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The revelation had struck with the force of lightning at 35,000 feet. Rebecca finally found her voice. You own the airline? I'm the largest individual shareholder, Tyrone corrected gently. I own 34.7% of Southwest Airlines. My family trust has invested $287 million over the past 15 years. Aisha closed her laptop with a soft click. I'm the general counsel for Williams Family Enterprises. I also serve as outside legal counsel for Southwest's diversity and inclusion initiatives. Cameron looked up from his phone. The TikTok has 12,000 viewers now. Instagram Live is at 7,800. Twitter ## flight discrimination has 18,000 posts. The numbers hit Rebecca like physical blows. Thousands of people had watched her attempt to humiliate the family that essentially owned the airline she worked for. This was a test, Zara said quietly. Wasn't it, Dad? Tyrone nodded. Your mother and I conduct quarterly assessments of company culture. We fly unannounced, eat at our airport restaurants, stay in our partner hotels. We observe how employees treat customers when they think no one important is watching. The words landed like bombs in the silent cabin. Jennifer Lee whispered, You've been testing us? Testing how a black family is treated when flying your airline, Aisha clarified. This is our third assessment flight this year. The previous two were uneventful. Rebecca's knees buckled. She grabbed a seat back for support. I didn't know. I had no idea. That's exactly the point, Tyrone said. How you treat people when you think they have no power reveals your true character. Captain Miller's voice was barely audible. Sir, what happens now? Tyrone reached into his briefcase again, withdrawing a thick document. Southwest Airlines Employee Handbook, Section 47, Anti-Discrimination Policy, Zero Tolerance Protocol. According to company policy, any employee found guilty of discriminatory behavior faces immediate termination. No warnings, no progressive discipline, immediate termination. Rebecca's career flashed before her eyes. 12 years with Southwest. Pension benefits, health insurance, professional reputation, all disintegrating in real time. However, Tyrone continued, this incident provides valuable data for our diversity training programs. Flight Attendant Sullivan, your behavior will be analyzed, documented, and used to train future employees on recognizing unconscious bias. The offer of professional survival hung in the air like a lifeline. But first, Aisha opened her laptop again. We need to address the immediate situation. Section 47.3 of company policy requires documentation of discriminatory incidents within 24 hours. Section 47.4 requires immediate supervisory notification. She turned the laptop screen toward Rebecca. A form was already open. Southwest Airlines Discrimination Incident Report. You have two choices, Tyrone said calmly. You can file an accurate incident report acknowledging discriminatory behavior, accept mandatory bias training, and remain employed. Or you can maintain that your actions were justified, face a federal investigation, and be terminated for cause. Rebecca stared at the laptop screen. Her reflection in the black pixels showed a woman whose world had just collapsed and been offered reconstruction. The social media documentation makes denial impossible, Aisha added gently. Thousands of witnesses have recorded your exact words and actions. The choice is accountability or termination. Maria's TikTok stream had reached 15,000 viewers. Comments poured in like a digital avalanche. Plot twist of the century. He owns the airline! Justice served at 35,000 feet. This is better than Netflix. Document everything! Rebecca's hand trembled as she reached for the laptop. I'll file the report. But Tyrone wasn't finished. There's something else you should know, he said, reaching into his briefcase one final time. This assessment was specifically requested by our board of directors following a pattern of discrimination complaints. You're the 7th Southwest employee to fail our cultural assessment this quarter. The 7th. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was a systemic problem that Tyrone Williams had been methodically documenting and addressing. Tomorrow morning, Aisha said, the board will vote on a comprehensive anti-discrimination protocol, real-time bias monitoring, mandatory cultural competency certification, financial penalties for discriminatory behavior. Rebecca's actions hadn't just jeopardized her career, they'd triggered corporate-wide policy changes that would affect thousands of employees. The power dynamic hadn't just shifted, it had inverted completely. Robert Parker's Instagram Live had attracted 12,000 viewers. His grandfatherly voice provided context. Folks, in 40 years of business travel, I've never witnessed anything like this. This gentleman just revealed that he owns the company whose employee was discriminating against him. Business traveler Sandra Torres raised her hand tentatively. Mr. Williams, I want to apologize on behalf of passengers who didn't speak up sooner. Tyrone's expression softened. Ms. Torres, you documented the situation and spoke truth. That took courage. Jennifer Lee approached cautiously. Sir, I want to apologize for my role in this incident. I should have questioned the passenger complaints. You followed protocol as you understood it, Aisha replied. The system failed you by not providing adequate training on recognizing discriminatory patterns. Captain Miller cleared his throat. Mr. Williams, I need to ask, was my crew's response part of your assessment? Everything is part of the assessment, Captain. How you handled Rebecca's initial complaint, how you investigated the allegations, how you protected passengers' rights while maintaining crew authority. Your response was adequate. The word adequate hung in the air like a performance review that could end a career. What would have been exceptional? Miller asked. Asking to see specific passenger complaints before taking action, observing the alleged disruptive behavior personally, recognizing that discriminatory actions create more cabin tension than the supposed problem they're meant to solve. Miller nodded grimly. I'll remember that. Tyrone's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it, then showed the screen to Aisha. Board meeting moved to 6 p.m. Est. Full discrimination protocol vote tonight. Janet. The timeline just accelerated, Aisha murmured. Your incident triggered an emergency board session. Rebecca overheard. What does that mean? It means, Tyrone explained, that by midnight tonight, Southwest Airlines will have the most comprehensive anti-discrimination policy in the aviation industry. Bias detection technology, mandatory cultural competency testing, financial accountability for discriminatory behavior. He paused, looking directly at Rebecca. It also means this incident will be analyzed by our legal team, our diversity consultants, and our board of directors. Your actions today will influence how 60,000 Southwest employees are trained on treating passengers with dignity. The weight of that responsibility settled over Rebecca like a lead blanket. I've made a terrible mistake, she whispered. You've made a learning opportunity, Tyrone corrected. The question is whether you're willing to learn from it. Cameron Williams looked up from his phone again. The live streams have reached 45,000 combined viewers. Hashtag flight discrimination is trending nationally. CNN just picked up the story. National news. The incident had escaped the confines of the aircraft and entered the broader conversation about racial justice in America. Mr. Williams, Maria called out from her seat. Can I ask you something for my followers? Tyrone nodded. Why didn't you reveal who you were immediately? You could have stopped this in the first minute. Tyrone's answer would be heard by thousands. Because how people treat you when they think you have no power is who they really are. If I'd revealed my position immediately, Rebecca would have behaved differently. But her true beliefs, her unconscious biases, her automatic assumptions about black families, those would have remained hidden. He paused, looking around the cabin. Real change requires understanding real problems. You can't fix what you refuse to see. The quiet black family in row 12 owned the airline, and they'd been watching the entire time. The aircraft had become a boardroom at 35,000 feet. Rebecca stood in the aisle, laptop balanced on a tray table, typing her discrimination incident report while 47,000 people watched across multiple live streams. Each keystroke felt like typing her own professional obituary. Under specific actions taken, Aisha guided. Document your exact words to my family. Rebecca's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. I told them to move to the rear of the aircraft because of passenger complaints about noise and food odors. Were there actual complaints? The pause stretched for 10 seconds. In real-time social media, 10 seconds felt like eternity. No documented complaints. Why did you make the request? Another pause. Rebecca's training had never prepared her for confessing racial bias to the people she'd discriminated against while thousands watched online. I made assumptions based on... She couldn't finish the sentence. Tyrone's phone rang. Not buzzed, rang. The distinctive tone of a priority alpha corporate emergency call. He answered immediately. This is Tyrone. Tyrone, this is Michael Rodriguez, General Counsel. The voice was audible to passengers in nearby rows. We need immediate legal documentation of the incident. The board has moved into an emergency session. 3 major civil rights organizations have already contacted our media department. The situation had escalated beyond airline policy into federal civil rights territory. Michael, I'm putting you on speaker. My wife is handling documentation. Aisha leaned toward the phone. Michael, this is Aisha. I'm documenting discriminatory actions taken by flight attendant Rebecca Sullivan against my family. We have video evidence from multiple passengers, witness testimony, and the flight attendant's admission of unsubstantiated bias. How many witnesses? Cameron looked up from his phone. 47,000 people are watching live across TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. The videos have been screen recorded and saved by hundreds of users. Rodriguez's silence spoke volumes. Tyrone, this is beyond our standard incident protocol. This is a federal case study in corporate discrimination response. The legal machinery was already in motion. What's our exposure? Tyrone asked. If we handle this correctly, it becomes a model for aviation industry bias prevention. If we handle it poorly, it becomes a $50 million lawsuit and a congressional hearing on discrimination in air travel. Rebecca's typing stopped. $50 million. Congressional hearings. Her actions had triggered consequences she'd never imagined. Michael, Aisha said, I'm sending you the preliminary incident report. But we need more than documentation. We need systemic change. The board is already drafting emergency protocols. Janet wants real-time bias monitoring implemented within 60 days. AI-powered language analysis of crew-passenger interactions, mandatory bias interruption training for all customer-facing employees. The scope of corporate response was staggering. Rebecca's 15-minute confrontation was reshaping an entire airline's operational procedures. What about immediate consequences? Tyrone asked. Flight attendant Sullivan will report to Human Resources immediately upon landing. Standard protocol would be suspension pending investigation, but given the public documentation, we're looking at immediate termination for cause. Rebecca's legs gave out. She sank into an empty seat, the laptop sliding off the tray table. Jennifer Lee caught it before it hit the floor. However, Rodriguez continued, if the employee acknowledges discriminatory behavior and agrees to become part of our bias prevention program, we might consider alternative consequences. A lifeline thrown across the wreckage of Rebecca's career. What kind of alternative consequences? Rebecca managed to ask. Immediate demotion to probationary status. Mandatory 40-hour bias intervention training. Assignment to our diversity education program as a case study. Public accountability through our corporate transparency initiative. Translation: professional humiliation in exchange for employment survival. I'll do it, Rebecca said immediately. I'll do whatever's required. But Tyrone wasn't finished with the corporate reckoning. Michael, what's our financial commitment to systemic change? The board has authorized $15 million for bias detection technology implementation, another $8 million for comprehensive employee retraining, $3 million for external diversity consulting. $26 million. Rebecca's discriminatory actions had triggered a $26 million corporate transformation. Maria's TikTok audience had swelled to 23,000 viewers. Her commentary provided real-time analysis. Y'all, we're watching a company completely restructure their policies in real time because one employee got caught being racist. Robert Parker's Instagram Live offered a business perspective. Folks, this is corporate crisis management at its finest. Southwest is spending millions to get ahead of this story rather than fighting it in court for years. Captain Miller approached Tyrone cautiously. Sir, I need to understand the timeline. When do these changes take effect? The emergency board session concludes at 8 p.m. EST, Rodriguez answered through the phone. New protocols will be implemented system-wide by tomorrow morning. Every Southwest employee will receive updated bias prevention training within 72 hours. The speed was breathtaking. A major corporation was overhauling operational procedures in real time to address discrimination that had occurred 2 hours earlier. But there's something else, Tyrone said, reaching into his briefcase yet again. Michael, the Williams Family Trust is prepared to make additional investments in Southwest Airlines contingent on meeting specific diversity benchmarks. He withdrew a document. Conditional Investment Agreement, Williams Family Trust, $50 million expansion. $50 million in additional investment, Tyrone announced, tied to measurable improvements in passenger diversity experiences, anonymous testing, statistical analysis of complaint patterns, regular bias assessments. Rebecca stared at the document. The family she'd tried to humiliate was prepared to invest an additional $50 million in the airline, but only if it proved worthy of that investment. What are the benchmarks? Rodriguez asked. Aisha opened her laptop to a prepared presentation. Zero tolerance for discriminatory incidents, 95% passenger satisfaction ratings across all demographic groups, bias detection technology with 98% accuracy rates, cultural competency certification for 100% of customer-facing employees. The standards were aggressive, measurable, and expensive to implement. If Southwest meets these benchmarks for 12 consecutive months, Tyrone continued, the Williams Family Trust will increase our ownership stake to 40% and recommend similar investments to other minority business networks. The carrot and stick approach. Meet the diversity standards and receive massive investment. Fail the standards and face continued scrutiny. Jennifer Lee spoke hesitantly. Mr. Williams, what happens to employees who fail the new bias training? Immediate termination, Aisha answered without hesitation. No progressive discipline. No second chances. Discriminatory behavior ends careers, not just causes paperwork. The new reality was crystal clear. Southwest Airlines was about to become the most aggressively anti-discriminatory airline in America. Rodriguez's voice crackled through the phone. Tyrone, the media is requesting statements. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, the story is going national. No statements until the corporate changes are finalized, Tyrone replied. Let the policies speak before we do. Cameron looked up from his phone again. Dad, the hashtag has 180,000 posts now. The video compilation has 2.3 million views across all platforms. 2.3 million people had watched Rebecca's discriminatory behavior and Tyrone's revelation. The incident had achieved viral status. Rebecca, Tyrone addressed her directly, you're about to become the most famous flight attendant in America. Not for service excellence, but for bias education. How does that feel? Rebecca's voice was barely audible. Terrifying and necessary. Good. Fear motivates change. Your story will be told in bias prevention training programs across the aviation industry. Every airline employee in America will learn about the Williams family incident. The personal consequences were becoming clear. Rebecca would survive professionally, but her discriminatory actions would follow her forever, as educational tools for others. Michael, Aisha said, send the final policy documents to my secure email. I want to review enforcement mechanisms before the board vote. Already sent. The enforcement section is comprehensive. Real-time monitoring, passenger feedback integration, statistical analysis of crew-passenger interactions by demographic groups. Southwest Airlines was implementing bias detection technology that would make Rebecca's discriminatory behavior impossible to repeat. The corporate machinery had moved with stunning efficiency. In 2 hours, a major corporation had convened emergency board sessions, allocated $26 million for bias prevention, drafted comprehensive anti-discrimination protocols, negotiated a $50 million conditional investment, coordinated with federal legal counsel, managed a viral social media crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Miller announced to the cabin, we'll be beginning our descent into LaGuardia Airport in 15 minutes. On behalf of Southwest Airlines, I want to formally apologize to the Williams family for the unacceptable treatment you received on this flight. The apology was heard by 51,000 live stream viewers and would be quoted in every news report about the incident. But Tyrone wasn't finished. He had one final corporate card to play that would ensure this moment created lasting change rather than temporary publicity. LaGuardia Airport, Gate 23, 4:47 p.m. EST. The aircraft doors opened to reveal Southwest Airlines CEO Janet Harrison, flanked by corporate lawyers and media crews behind security barriers. Rebecca Sullivan's 12-year career ended the moment she stepped off the aircraft. Flight Attendant Sullivan, you're relieved of duty effective immediately, Harrison announced. The termination was witnessed by departing passengers still recording on their phones. Ma'am, Mr. Williams mentioned alternatives to termination. Rebecca's voice cracked. You chose accountability over denial, which saved your career but not your position. You'll be reassigned to our diversity education department, developing bias prevention training using your own actions as case studies. 40% salary reduction. Travel benefits permanently revoked. 2 years direct supervision. Professional survival with permanent consequences. 5:15 p.m., Southwest Corporate Headquarters, Emergency Board Session. 8 board members convened virtually as the Williams family incident required immediate response. Stock price had dropped 3.2%, but recovered when policy changes were announced. 47,000 people watched the discrimination live, reported board member Patricia Parker. The hashtag reached 340,000 posts. CNN is leading tonight's broadcast. CEO Harrison presented new protocols. Fair Sky monitoring system launches in 30 days. AI-powered analysis of every crew-passenger interaction. Real-time discrimination alerts. Mandatory training for all 60,000 employees. Tyrone spoke from the conference table head. The Williams Family Trust will fund accelerated implementation. Our $50 million conditional investment reduces timeline to 60 days. The board voted unanimously, 8-0 for comprehensive bias prevention. Check of 30 p.m. Rebecca's public accountability. Rebecca faced media cameras, choosing ownership over hiding. My name is Rebecca Sullivan. 2 hours ago, I discriminated against the Williams family based on unconscious racial bias. My actions were wrong, unprofessional, and harmful. The confession broadcast live on major networks. I will spend my remaining career ensuring no Southwest employee repeats my mistakes, developing training using my discriminatory behavior as educational material. The Williams Effect. Industry transformation. Within 24 hours, competitors responded. American Airlines announced enhanced diversity training. United pledged $10 million for bias prevention technology. Delta hired external diversity consultants. JetBlue implemented passenger advocacy programs. The incident triggered industry-wide transformation. $1 p.m. Social media impact. Viral spread continued accelerating. TikTok, 4.2 million views. Instagram, 2.8 million views. Twitter, 890,000 hashtag mentions. YouTube, 1.6 million views on news coverage. Total reach, Over 9 million people witnessed the discrimination incident. Fair Sky Technology, Implementation. Southwest's IT department worked overnight, implementing real-time language analysis of crew communications, passenger feedback integration systems, statistical monitoring of complaint patterns by demographics, automated alerts for discriminatory behavior. The technology made future discrimination impossible without immediate detection. Corporate results. Southwest had accomplished in 6 hours what typically required years, $26 million, allocated for bias prevention. Zero-tolerance policies implemented, $50 million diversity investment secured, comprehensive employee retraining launched, industry-wide competitive response triggered, personal transformation. Rebecca Sullivan became corporate America's most effective bias trainer. Her first-hand discrimination experience resonated with employees in ways theoretical training never could. The Williams family had transformed personal humiliation into systemic progress, protecting countless future travelers. Williams family legacy. Cameron Williams expanded his diversity advocacy to 847 schools nationwide. Zara Williams wrote a best-selling memoir funding bias prevention for smaller airlines. Isaiah Williams created the Fair Flight app for real-time discrimination reporting. 6 months later, Fair Sky exceeded all benchmarks. Zero discrimination incidents for 6 months, 98.7%, passenger satisfaction across demographics, 99.2% bias detection accuracy, 100%, employee cultural competency certification. The Williams Family Trust delivered the promised $50 million investment, increasing ownership to 40.1%. Other minority networks followed with $127 million in diversity investments. Lasting impact. Southwest became the world's most aggressively anti-discriminatory airline. The Williams model of strategic, quiet resistance was taught in business schools and civil rights curricula nationwide. Rebecca's 15 minutes of discriminatory behavior had triggered millions in corporate investment and industry-wide policy changes. Real change achieved through measured power, strategic patience, and privilege used for purpose rather than revenge. 6 months later, Southwest Airlines Corporate Training Center, Dallas. Rebecca Sullivan stood before a classroom of new flight attendants, her voice steady despite the weight of her story. My name is Rebecca Sullivan, and I'm going to tell you about the worst 15 minutes of my professional life. The training video had been viewed by 127,000 Southwest employees. Rebecca's discriminatory actions, captured in viral social media posts, now served as the cornerstone of aviation industry bias prevention training. I discriminated against a black family because of unconscious assumptions I didn't even realize I held, she continued. Those 15 minutes cost Southwest Airlines $26 million, triggered industry-wide policy changes, and nearly destroyed my career. The personal transformation was remarkable. Rebecca had become the most effective bias prevention trainer in corporate America. Her first-hand experience with discrimination's consequences resonated with employees in ways that theoretical training never could. The Williams effect. Industry impact. The viral incident had created measurable change across American aviation. American Airlines implemented AI-powered bias detection, reducing discrimination complaints by 73%. United Airlines launched passenger advocacy programs, achieving 96% satisfaction ratings across all demographic groups. Delta Airlines hired 2,400 diversity consultants, restructuring corporate culture from the ground up. JetBlue Airways created real-time passenger feedback systems, allowing immediate intervention in problematic situations. The numbers told the story of systemic transformation. More importantly, these weren't temporary publicity measures. The Williams incident had demonstrated that viral discrimination created permanent reputational damage and financial loss. Corporate self-interest, now aligned with civil rights principles. Personal legacy, the Williams family. Cameron Williams, now 18, had leveraged his viral fame into activism. His high school diversity advocacy group had expanded to 847 schools nationwide. The Williams model of quiet, strategic resistance was being taught in social justice curricula across America. Zara Williams, 16, had written a book, Power in Silence: How My Family Changed an Industry. The memoir had spent 12 weeks on bestseller lists, with proceeds funding bias prevention technology for smaller airlines. Isaiah Williams, 13, had created a mobile app called Fair Flight that allowed passengers to report discriminatory behavior in real time, connecting them with corporate accountability systems. The family had transformed personal trauma into tools for systemic change. Corporate accountability. Southwest Airlines. The Fair Sky monitoring system had exceeded all performance benchmarks. 0 discrimination incidents for 6 consecutive months. 98.7% passenger satisfaction across all demographic groups. 9.2%. Bias detection accuracy in real-time monitoring. 100% cultural competency. Certification for customer-facing employees. The Williams Family Trust had delivered the promised $50 million investment, increasing their ownership stake to 40.1%. Other minority business networks had followed suit, creating a $127 million diversity investment fund. Southwest Airlines had become the most aggressively anti-discriminatory airline in the world. Social media legacy. The original TikTok videos had reached 47 million cumulative views. Flight discrimination remained a permanent hashtag, with passengers using it to document both positive and negative airline experiences. Maria Gonzalez, the original TikTok live streamer, had parlayed her viral moment into a career as a travel diversity advocate. Her channel, Fair Skies, had 890,000 followers and partnerships with major airlines to promote inclusive travel experiences. The viral moment had created permanent accountability infrastructure. Real-world impact. Beyond aviation, the Williams incident had influenced corporate bias prevention across industries. Hotels implemented guest treatment monitoring systems. Restaurants created bias detection training for service staff. Retail launched customer interaction analysis programs. Healthcare developed cultural competency requirements for patient care. The ripple effects had transformed how American businesses approached diversity and inclusion. Current day, Tyrone Williams reflection. The goal was never revenge, Tyrone Williams reflected during a Harvard Business School case study interview. The goal was creating systems that prevent the next family from experiencing what we experienced. His measured response to discrimination had become a template for strategic activism. The Williams model prioritized systemic change over personal satisfaction, long-term transformation over immediate gratification. Real power isn't about punishing people who wrong you, he continued. Real power is creating conditions where wrong becomes impossible. The philosophy had resonated far beyond corporate boardrooms. Life stories that matter. The Williams family incident had joined the pantheon of transformative Black stories that changed American business practices. Like the Greensboro lunch counter sit-ins, the Montgomery bus boycott, and other moments of quiet resistance, their experience demonstrated that dignity and strategic patience could accomplish what anger and confrontation could not. These touching stories of real-life transformation proved that individual actions could create institutional change. The viral documentation had preserved every moment of discrimination and redemption, creating permanent educational resources for future generations. Students would study the Williams incident in business ethics courses, civil rights history classes, and corporate responsibility seminars. The story had become part of America's ongoing conversation about race, power, and progress. Call to action. Your voice matters. The Williams family's experience proves that individual moments of courage can create lasting change, but transformation requires sustained attention and continued activism. How you can contribute. Document discrimination when you witness it. Your phone camera can create accountability where none existed before. Share stories of bias and resistance. The more we expose discriminatory behavior, the more expensive it becomes for companies to ignore. Support businesses that demonstrate genuine commitment to equality. Your spending choices send powerful messages about acceptable corporate behavior. Most importantly, remember that power comes in many forms. You don't need millions of dollars or corporate ownership to demand dignity and respect. Every voice matters. Every story counts. Every act of resistance creates ripples that can transform industries. The Williams family started with a simple demand: treat us with respect. Their quiet persistence changed an entire industry. What industry will you change with your story? Share your experiences with discrimination in the comments below. Tag someone who needs to hear this message of strategic resistance. Subscribe to the Black Voices Speak channel for more stories of dignity, persistence, and transformation. Because these real-life stories of touching personal courage prove that change is always possible when we refuse to accept less than we deserve. Your voice, your story, your power.